I'd like to put forth my hypothesis that ADHD doesn't really exist, or more specifically, that we are referring to a gift of human evolution as a disorder. DSM-5 defines ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, as a chronic neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by a persistent pattern of inattention or hyperactivity impulsivity that interferes with development or functioning. For me personally, there's just so many things wrong with that. Before I continue, I want to make it very clear, I do not claim to be, nor am I, a formally trained psychologist. I'm just a guy that has the God-given gift of asking the right questions, and I have a lot to ask when it comes to ADHD. One, I have a very big problem with the fact that ADHD is defined and characterized primarily by its symptoms and not any real root cause. That's not to say that they haven't found the root cause after all these years, but I find it very suspicious whenever a particular disease or disorder is defined primarily by its symptoms. Because that means the philosophy to deal with ADHD is mitigating the symptoms as opposed to actually dealing with the root problem and fixing that. And because dealing with the symptoms instead of the root problem is the philosophy being used to deal with ADHD, that brings me to my second question. When they say it's a neurodevelopmental disorder that primarily affects children and their ability to actually pay attention to one thing for a long period of time, then is that really an attention problem or a focus problem? Because they're not the same thing. And if it is a focus problem, then why are we blaming children for the inability to focus on something that does not interest them? A child in a classroom listening to a teacher teach a lecture about something he doesn't care about and wanting to use all his pent-up energy for something else is normal. That makes sense. To label a child, or anyone's ability for that matter, to pay attention to something they don't care about as a disorder is fucking ludicrous. Those same children seem to have no problem paying attention to a video game for hours. Why? Because they're actually interested in that. Oh, and surprise, surprise, there's about 15% of boys diagnosed with ADHD as opposed to 8% of girls. Boys, who are on average more energetic and less agreeable than their female counterparts at that age. I could go into an entire rant about how the gynocentric social order is using ADHD as a tool to conform young boys into a female standard of living, but that's an entirely different video for another day. Look, every single person I've ever met that is either medically or self-diagnosed with ADHD has a level of superhuman focus that I have never seen in my life. It's hard to get them to pay attention to most things, but when they find something they're genuinely interested in, they are so locked in and reach a level of focus that most people will just never attain to. These people aren't attention deficit. They're high energy and hyper focused, and everything else gets blocked out. And guess what? They've done enough research to find out that ADHD is a genetic trait, which to me makes perfect sense. So I'm going to put forth my own unique hypothesis on why ADHD even exists. I think what we call ADHD, or this level of focus, was heightened during the period when persistent hunting was invented. If you don't know what persistent hunting is, it's a cooperation strategy humans came up with to hunt large animals in groups. Basically, it involved chasing down the animal, separating it from its group or pack, and then essentially just chasing it into exhaustion till it drops, cornering it, and killing it. This was back in spear and stone days, so not a lot of long-range weapon options. The hunters would split into multiple groups and take turns chasing down that particular prey. But they would have a specific group of men watching the prey from a vantage point while, the shift change is happening between the groups of hunters. Their job was to make sure the prey never leaves their sight and to direct the next group of hunters where it is so they can go keep chasing it. I personally believe that these special group of men, these overseers, if you want to call them that, are the people who developed essentially this hyper-focused trait that we call ADHD. Just imagine the level of focus they had to do their job. They definitely had to block out all distractions and focus on nothing but their prey, and they probably had to go hours, maybe even days, not getting a wink of sleep. Imagine trying to get their attention while they're in that hyper-focused state. You see what I mean? Nothing else matters at that point. All that matters to them is that big juicy mammoth and the plans they have for it. All I'm saying is that ADHD should be renamed to uninterruptible hyperfocus, and anyone with ADHD shouldn't see it as a bad thing. It's great, actually. It's a superpower. Do with all this information what you must. And hey, October 1st is almost here.